Berserk is a classic. Along with saying that, I will also say it is the only seinen I've ever read. The difference between your typical shonen published work and a seinen is the fact these stories are targeted towards adult men instead of shonen's teenage boys audience. This allows these stories to target much similar, but even more dark and adult themes head on. And when it comes to the medium of manga, this means they can virtually draw and depict whatever they want. Of course, with editorial eyes saying how much they should tone down and such. We'll come back to this later. Back to Berserk. I read this series 2 years ago, and while I wouldn't say the story changed my life, I would say that it can be very introspective and make you ask things about yourself. The type of person you are, what would you do if put in a character's shoes, how can power corrupt even the most positive people, the significance of trauma, religion, and how it can blind people from big issues, and so on and so on. The story is nothing to scoff at, and the art within the story is another beast of itself. But right now, I have to forcibly pull these rose-tinted glasses off and really ask a bigger question. Warning: the rest of this video covers dark and depraved subjects like sexual assault and rape. If you cannot handle these subjects, please, I advise you to click off this video. With that warning, I should rip off the band-aid. Within Kentaro Miura's dark and twisted world, he goes to great lengths to show you how evil and twisted this world is. Mainly in the form of its grotesque beast, but also the one thing beast and humans within this world share, which is an intense lust that drives them to rape. There is a lot to unpack here, and this is a very, very intense and sensitive subject within the medium that can only and should only be handled with the most delicate of hands. And I'm here to say that I don't think Kentaro Miura is that pair of hands. Before I get a swarm of people saying I'm a tourist or I'm a woke liberal sissy, let me say I think the subject matter can have purpose in media. Works of art should reflect the real world we live in. It's what can drive such emotion within a piece for an artist and its subsequent viewer. The massive caveat with this question is what draws the line between realism and dark, twisted desire. There are times in Berserk where I feel like the subject matter is handled in a good fashion. For example, our main character, Guts. Guts is a deeply flawed but relatable character to some. A big part of his character is his unwillingness for intimacy or deeper connection. The reason for this is from his roots as a kid. Of course, having your only father figure hate you, but also the same fact that this father figure sold his child body for the disgusting whims of one of the many men in his army. This is depicted in a deep, dark way. Literal darkness infesting every corner of the page, while the subject in question is in the center, depicted in the violent manner in which the crime truly is. This truly doesn't have the ideal gaze of intercourse in mind when being illustrated. It gets across the crime in question without being too grotesque visually, and in a narrative sense, it only bolsters the negative feelings we as readers will have towards Gambino and makes us feel for Guts. And this unwillingness to get close to people physically and mentally follows Guts for the rest of the series, so I think it's okay. I think it's a great example of using an event like this in a story. The next time the subject is used is for another character's backstory, and that character is Casca. This is when I truly question Kentaro's motives. It's not just the fact that this is the plot point he chose, but it's also the fact that he shows it, and in detail, showing Casca as a child unwrote. Sorry, this video is a touchy subject, and I don't know what to say to avoid YouTube from striking me down. And it's disturbing enough to see a mangaka illustrate such a thing, especially when compared to Guts. I think you can make an argument for this being for quote-unquote male gaze. And I think the thing that makes this more negative for me is the fact I know it's just the start. Narratively, I think it still shows how evil this world is, but did another character's backstory have to have the same plot point? It seems to touch the subject a lot already for shock value, and not even in the next chapter, this subject matter is touched on again, when Griffith sells himself to an older noble for money. Now, I'm still trying to give Kentaro the benefit of a doubt. He is building a narrative around people with more power in this world, taking advantage of anyone they see as below them. But I always just feel as if there's a better way to show that than this, especially when Kentaro himself uses it so consistently. But for this, I'll give it the pass because we don't see it, at least. It was only spoken of, and I wish that could be the case if he always uses such sensitive subjects. But also, in a narrative sense, it shows Griffith will give up anything for his army, and even further, his dreams. So in that sense, it's an excellent plot point that I think deserves to exist. It just sucks it gets muddied down by how the subject matter is handled other times. Now, the next time we see this is Casca once again. At this point, it becomes a bit weird. What purpose, other than serving oh, these guys are evil, does this serve? They were already going to kill her. What's the point to keep going on and on with this subject matter? It gets to a point. It just seems perverted and gross. For the greatly written female character Casca is at this point, it's such a disservice to her, feeling like anytime she's vulnerable that this plot point is going to come up, especially when Miura always has to depict it like this, framing it as a dojin. The next time this is shown is a vital plot point, and that is Griffith finally breaking down at the betrayal of Guts leaving him and taking it out on Charlotte. And this is rape. No way around it. Even though she still loves Griffith, this doesn't mean she wanted it at the time. She says no multiple times. Once again, it's this gray area where if the subject wasn't touched on so many times, I'd say, yeah, I think this is a great way to show Griffith's heart slowly drifting into darkness. But I can only wish that it was shown another way, because the sexual violence against women gets really fatiguing when it's shown this much. That's not to mention the visuals being the most in-your-face stand ever, being very graphic in nature. This is where I think I should explain why this can be problematic. It is no secret that Japan is not the sanitized perfect country weebs think it is. It has a very, very dark history when it comes to rape and child exploitation, with the act banning and condemning the access to see only being set in place in 1999. That is way too close when it comes to the present day. That's only 27 years ago. And this is an even bigger discussion when it comes to lolly culture. The reason this content is bad is because it was meant to replicate that exploitation in the animation medium before it was even banned. You'd have to be an idiot to not see the huge problem it is that people still engage with such content. Not to mention, Berserk was being published and created before such bans were put in place, showing that this exposure and constant pushing for SA in Miura's story was in an era where rape culture was at an all-time high. And you expect me to not see that there's maybe an issue with that persisting in his work when it sometimes doesn't have an intent narrative purpose? And even if every time it was shown in a good way with the author having good intentions for a good message, it still perpetuates this constant content of women in violent situations. As an author, you'd also have to be aware of how your content can be viewed. And that's even if you have the best intentions in mind, which I question Miura for. With all of this, it gives an awful addition to the rape culture in Japan, but also across the world. Anyway, let's hit a few more examples from the story. Immediately after this, Charlotte's own father sexually assaults her, and this is just awful. I feel like you could do a lot more to show the King of Midland sees his own daughter as his own property, or that he feels as if her purity belongs to him, rather than back-to-back rape scenes with her, especially when she's presumably a minor still. And I feel like that this in a vacuum could be a good vile scene to show how evil a character is and how disgusting their intentions are. But with the constant slamming of this subject in your face, it just can't allow me to say in good faith that this isn't just the author's disgusting desire shining through. In all this negativity, I do want to highlight this scene with Casca and Guts. I think it is one of the best narrative displays of intercourse in this story. It shows Guts' trauma, Casca's trust and bond she feels with Guts. It's such a beautiful scene that shows how much the characters have grown. It never feels violent. Maybe it is a bit more for the male gaze, but I think it is a beautiful scene that parallels Griffith to Guts. But then it makes me want to take all that praise back when we immediately dip back into shit like this. This intro scene to their next opponent in the way of their mission retrieving Griffith just shows the constant use of this trope when it comes to Miura's writing. Out of all the ways to show the beastly creatures and their wickedness, it always just comes down to violence towards women. And then the next chapter, we see him actively pillaging a village and doing the same thing to a woman. This serves no narrative purpose. They just killed and torched down a village. I know they're evil. I know they're wicked. You don't have to throw in sexual assault and rape a woman to bolster that. It's just gross and perpetuates rape culture. And you might have noticed that I keep including the fact it's women, because that's the truth. You could maybe sell me on the fact that this is a fantasy world and
this is just realism, baby. Stop crying, liberal.
Well, I don't know. If it is realistic, why is it only women? And why is it only young women or conventionally attractive women? Realism only works when you can show every side of this wicked crime to life, not just the part that can be easily fetishized. And the only time it's a man is when it's Guts. And out of all characters, he's also the only one to get revenge for such a crime, while women are just violently thrown into such situations and die or are stuck in the cycle of it. And this isn't even to mention the scene that happens with Wild and Casca. It's just fatiguing and serves no narrative purpose. It shows as such when it was literally cut out of the '97 adaptation of the anime. And I'm telling you, nobody batted an eye. Let's wrap this up with the last example, the event of the Eclipse, with Casca and a person who is no longer Griffith, but Femto, a tragic scene, as it is one of the most devastating things that happens in this manga. Too bad that all of that narrative weight is taken off of it because of Miura's constant, fatiguing sense to always use it as a way to shock you. If Casca was never always put in these situations, it makes the one time it has narrative purpose hit a lot harder. But now, it's muddied for me, because I can only think it's some bizarre fetish Miura snuck into his writing. And that's the point. No matter how much forethought was put into this exact scene with the weight intended for it to have, with the intended events to follow, none of it matters if you can't treat the subject with the amount of care it desperately needs. And that's not to mention that this event is widely misinterpreted by fans and is the butt of many jokes in the fandom. And also the handling of Casca past the point of this event. With the traumatizing events leaving her mute, her senses shocked, she is scared and can't trust anything or anyone. Too bad that it's literally played for goofs and laughs sometimes. It can also come off as this weird male savior complex, with Guts constantly taking care of her. And spoilers, her not even overcoming it by her own means and just getting magical fairy powers to fix her trauma. It all just rubs me the wrong way, and also rubs a lot of women in a bad way. How can you blame them? There's also this narrative that Miura regretted the amount of times he added these scenes for shock value, and I was inclined to believe such, as yeah, the more you read Berserk, the less these scenes come as frequent events. But no, he actually never felt guilty for such events, and in fact, phrases it as him pushing the limits of his editors. So the craziest part in all this, despite Japan's awful culture around child exploitation and rape, is even his own editors were telling him to calm down. Now look, am I trying to cancel a dead man? No. I don't want to believe Miura's complex work that is Berserk is just one big fetish piece, because truthfully, I don't think it is. I think it has great potential for the themes and messages it perpetuates, but it sadly is bogged down by Miura's bad habits in the way he portrays women. I still mildly like Berserk, and I don't want any Berserk fan to feel guilty for liking this series, but if you are going to enjoy it, you have to be aware of what you are enjoying, and in the same breath, realize its major faults, as well as realizing Miura isn't a saint, and isn't exactly a good person if he can write and draw women the way he does, and is not beyond harsh criticism. I sincerely hope this video and its comment section can serve as a great discussion piece, and not just people arguing that their manga isn't for sissy liberals. I sincerely understand the struggle of people labeling something you love as just problematic and not wanting to engage with it because of that. Neon Genesis Evangelion and Chainsaw Man gets a lot of these people who don't want to try and understand the significance of the story and its events and just say it gives off a poor message. But in the case of Berserk, this is just far too big to tell off as themes and such, and it highlights a major issue with our modern culture, especially that of the Japanese. In this world, we don't need fiction perpetuating more violence towards women. It only continuously cradles this festering culture our world has, especially if it's not treated seriously. Thanks for watching. Hi, hello there. Thank you for making it once again to the end of the video. If you're new here, usually I do a little epilogue of me rambling to basically what the video is about and anything else pertaining to the channel. This video was really heavy. I usually do videos where I can keep the jokey attitude all the way through. This one, I couldn't, for obvious reasons. This is a really big subject matter that I wanted to be taken seriously. That being said, I do apologize for the amount of text. There's so many blurbs and extra points I had to add on throughout this whole video because it is a very sensitive subject. When I looked at the Reddit post where a person was bringing it up and trying to defend it, everyone in the comment sections just really angry. Everyone in the Berserk fandom really gets angry about this conversation, and to a point I get it. It's very common, but it's common for a reason. This is such a big thing that happens in this manga, and I feel like there should never be a conversation that's shut down because of this subject matter. And like I said, I hope any Berserk fan that disagrees with me at least watches through this whole video to see that I am not trying to dismantle the thing you like, because I like it too. 2. The reason I'm this upset is because I love Berserk so much. But yeah, thank you guys for watching this video. I hope that the change of tone is something you guys can take and you can still enjoy and consume. Next video, I'll especially make sure that it's not as serious and we can just be fun and jokey through it the whole time, because one of my things as a writer and editor is that I do hope I can make you guys laugh sometimes, because I love when any content creator can make me laugh and give me a smile throughout a hard day. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.
Also, like and subscribe to this channel on my second one. Okay, bye.